Sparks flew in the desert twilight when Dr. Mara Collins, the lone human aboard the starship Orion, raced across the sand toward a fallen hull. Her rifle in one hand, her medical kit in the other. She plunged into a pack of snarling shadowmanes, six-legged predators, 6 times her height, to pull a bleeding creature from its metal tomb. The rest of the crew watched in horror. She's going to get herself killed, and revive a killer for us. But when Mara finally lifted the beast into the Orion shuttle, no one suspected that this wounded Shadowmane would become the ship's most beloved crew member. The starship Orion hummed quietly through the darkness of space, its sleek hull cutting through the void with practiced ease. Blue lights illuminated the corridors, casting a calming glow across the metal walls. In the xenobiology lab, Dr. Mara Collins peered through a microscope at a small vial of samples, her fingers adjusting the focus with practiced precision. "Fascinating," she murmured, making notes on her tablet. "The cellular adaptation is remarkable. I've never seen anything like it." The door to the lab slid open with a soft hiss, and Lieutenant Jrak entered. His reptilian features were tense, scales slightly raised along his neck, a sign of irritation that Mara had learned to recognize during their months together on the Orion. "Still examining those specimens?" Jrak's voice was clipped, precise. "Captain Orlan requests your presence on the bridge. Immediately." Mara looked up, pushing a strand of auburn hair from her face. "Has something happened?" "A distress signal. Encrypted. Low power." Each sentence from Jrak was economical, devoid of unnecessary elaboration. "Captain will explain." As they walked the corridor toward the bridge, Mara noticed the sidelong glances Jrak cast her way. Concern mingled with something else. Wariness, perhaps. "You disagree with my research approach," she said quietly. Jrak's yellow eyes narrowed. "Humans have a peculiar relationship with danger. You see everything as worthy of saving." "Not everything," Mara corrected, "but I believe in giving all life a chance." The Sarian lieutenant made a clicking sound with his tongue, the equivalent of a dismissive snort. "And that is why we worry." The bridge of the Orion was a semicircular chamber, dominated by a panoramic viewport. Stars streaked by as pinpricks of light, and holographic displays hovered at various stations. Captain Orlan's massive form occupied the central command chair, his cetacean features serene but alert. The captain's whale-like body was supported by a specialized gravity harness that allowed him to navigate the ship's corridors despite his aquatic origins. "Dr. Collins," Orlan's deep voice resonated through the chamber. "Thank you for coming promptly." Engineer Vorda stood by the communications array, her insectoid antennae twitching nervously. Like all Kirasians, Vorda possessed a chitinous exoskeleton and compound eyes that reflected the bridge lights in a kaleidoscope of colors. "Show her," Orlan instructed. Vorda activated a holographic display. 3 days ago, the freighter Galatea was caught in a storm on Arelon 7. Their hull was shredded. The crew evacuated in escape pods, which were recovered by a passing merchant vessel. Her mandibles clicked anxiously. "But our sensors have detected a remaining life sign in the wreckage." Mara studied the display, which showed a topographical map of a desert planet. Red markers indicated wreckage, scattered across a rocky plain. "The Galatea's signal is encrypted," Captain Orlan continued. "Federation protocol dictates we investigate." "Arelon 7, Jrak hissed. "Home to Shadowmanes, apex predators, 6 limbs, crystalline spines, highly territorial. We've lost entire mining teams to them." Vorda's antennae twitched more rapidly. "Our scans confirm at least one life sign trapped in the wreckage, but thermal readings show a pack of Shadowmanes circling the crash site. Any rescue attempt would be suicide," Jrak finished. Mara studied the readouts more carefully. "If someone's still alive down there, we have to try." "The risk is unacceptable," Vorda countered. "We would lose ship's personnel and potentially bring a predator on board." Captain Orlan's large eyes blinked slowly. "I understand your concerns. Engineer Vorta. But Federation protocol is clear. We cannot ignore a distress signal. Then send a drone, Zrak suggested. The wreckage is unstable, Vorta replied. A drone lacks the adaptability needed to navigate the debris and extract a survivor. Mara stepped forward. I volunteer to go. The bridge fell silent. Captain Orlan studied her with ancient, knowing eyes. Explain your reasoning, Dr. Collins. I'm a xenobiologist. I've studied the behavior patterns of apex predators, including shadow manes. I know their territorial markers, their hunting cycles. I can navigate around them. Zrak made a sound of disbelief. Theory versus practice, Doctor. These creatures will tear you apart. Not if I'm properly equipped. Mara held her ground. I'll take a non-lethal ion rifle, sedatives, and deploy scout drones for reconnaissance. If the situation proves too dangerous, I'll abort. Captain Orlan was quiet for a long moment, his massive form shifting slightly in the gravity harness. Very well, Dr. Collins. Prepare for descent in Shuttle Sable 2. Lieutenant Zrak. Outfit her with all necessary equipment. His gaze softened. This is a rescue mission only. At the first sign of overwhelming danger, you will return to the Orion. That is an order. Understood, Captain. As Mara turned to leave, she caught Vorta and Zrak exchanging worried glances. She understood their concern, to them. Her compassion seemed reckless, even foolish. But she couldn't ignore the possibility of saving a life, no matter how remote the chances. The shuttle bay echoed, with the sound of equipment being loaded onto Sable 2. Mara checked her gear methodically. A specialized non-lethal ion rifle calibrated to stun even creatures as large as shadow manes. A medical kit containing sedatives, potent enough to subdue apex predators. Desert armor reinforced against both heat and claws. And a multi-tool designed to cut through twisted metal. As she worked, doubt crept in. What if she couldn't find the survivor? What if the life sign was fading even now? What if it was a hostile alien, one that would attack her on sight? Zrak approached, carrying a compact scout drone. I've programmed it to transmit thermal and motion data directly to your helmet display. His tone was clipped, but Mara detected concern beneath the efficiency. Sandstorms increase after local sunset. You have approximately 4 hours. That should be enough time. It is insufficient, Zrak contradicted. Shadowmanes hunt at dusk. Their visual acuity doubles as light fades. Mara secured the last of her equipment. Then I'd better hurry. The Sarian lieutenant hesitated, then added, The captain has ordered me to monitor your vital signs throughout the mission. If they indicate extreme distress, you'll send in the cavalry? Mara smiled slightly. There will be no cavalry, Dr. Collins. The risk to additional personnel would be unacceptable. Zrak's yellow eyes met hers directly. If you fall, we will mark the site and report the loss to Federation Command. The bluntness was typical of Sarians, but Mara appreciated the honesty. I understand, Lieutenant, but I don't plan on falling. Sable 2 disengaged from the Orion with a gentle shudder. Mara guided the craft into Aerolon 7's upper atmosphere, watching as red dust storms swirled far below. The planet's surface was a tapestry of orange deserts and rocky outcroppings. Beautiful, but hostile. Sable 2 to Orion, beginning descent, she reported. Coordinates locked on the Galatia's main hull section. Confirmed. Sable 2. Captain Orlan's voice replied, Maintain communication protocols. Remember your mission parameters. The shuttle punched through cloud layers, buffeted by high-altitude winds. Mara compensated, keeping the craft steady as she approached the designated landing zone, a relatively flat area approximately 1 kilometer from the largest wreckage piece. As the shuttle touched down, sand scattered across the viewport. Mara sealed her helmet and ran final checks on her equipment. The external temperature reading showed 43 degrees Celsius, and wind speed was increasing. Time was indeed short. She launched the scout drone from the shuttle's hatch, watching as it sped toward the wreckage. The thermal feed appeared on her helmet display, revealing the landscape in shades of blue and red. The Galatia's hull glowed blue, cooler than the surrounding desert, while scattered heat signatures indicated the Shadowmane pack. Mara counted at least 10 of the creatures prowling around the wreckage. "Orion, I'm registering multiple Shadowmanes at the crash site," she reported, beginning approach on foot. "Proceed with extreme caution," Vorda's voice came through, her concern evident even through the static. "Their sensory abilities far exceed our previous estimates." Mara stepped onto Arelon 7's surface, the sand shifting beneath her boots. The weight of the ion rifle was reassuring against her shoulder as she moved forward in a half-crouch, using the dunes for cover. Through her helmet's enhanced vision, she could make out the Shadowmanes more clearly now. Each beast was roughly the size of a transport vehicle, with 6 powerful limbs ending in curved claws. Crystal-tipped spines ran along their backs, glinting in the fading sunlight. The pack's leader, a massive male with a distinctive silver stripe down its spine, paced around the largest piece of wreckage, occasionally rearing up to claw at the metal hull. The wind was picking up, swirling sand reducing visibility. Mara knew this worked in her favor. The gusting winds would help mask her scent and sounds of approach. She moved from dune to dune, pausing only to check the drone's feed for the predator's positions. "Approaching the primary hull section," she whispered into her comm. "The pack seems focused on a specific area. I think they can sense the life form inside." As she edged closer, Mara noticed something troubling: deep scratches in the metal, near what appeared to be a fractured hatch. The marks were fresh, the metal still shining where claws had scored it deeply. Something, or someone, had tried to force entry into the hull. Taking advantage of a momentary distraction as the Alpha Shadowmane charged at a smaller member of the pack, Mara sprinted the final distance to the hull. She pressed herself against the cool metal, heart pounding, and activated her scanner. The life sign was stronger now, pulsing steadily on her display. It was located approximately 15 meters inside, behind several layers of collapsed interior bulkheads. "I've reached the hull," she reported, searching for an entry point. After circling halfway around the wreckage, Mara found a torn section where the hull had buckled during impact. The opening was narrow, barely wide enough for her to squeeze through with her equipment. She checked the drone feed one last time. The pack had momentarily moved to the far side of the wreckage, possibly distracted by another desert creature. "I'm going in," she announced, and slipped through the jagged opening before anyone on the Orion could object. Inside, the Galatia's corridors were a maze of twisted metal and dangling wires. Emergency lighting flickered weakly, casting eerie shadows. Mara followed her scanner, climbing over collapsed beams and squeezing through narrow gaps in the bulkheads. The life sign grew stronger with each passing meter. Then she heard it, a low, pained whimper. Not human, but not like any Shadowmane vocalization she'd studied either. It was guttural, resonant, almost like the sound of a wounded Earth predator. Mara edged forward, her rifle ready. One more collapsed doorway stood between her and the life form. As she prepared to cut through it with her multi-tool, a sudden crash from outside made her freeze. The Shadowmanes were trying to break in. "Orion, the pack is attempting to breach the hull," she whispered. "I need to work quickly." She activated her multi-tool, its laser cutting through the metal with agonizing slowness. Another crash echoed through the ship, closer this time. The Shadowmanes had found her entry point. Finally, the doorway gave way, and Mara pushed through, only to stop short, stunned by what she saw. It wasn't a human survivor, or even a smaller alien species as she'd expected. Instead, lying pinned beneath a fallen door, was a Shadowmane cub. Its fur was matted with a substance that resembled blue blood. One of its hind legs clearly mangled. Its 6 amber eyes tracked her weakly, and a pitiful whimper escaped its throat. Oh, Mara breathed. Oh, no. Dr. Collins, report, Captain Orland's voice demanded. What have you found? It's... it's a shadow mane. A juvenile. Mara approached cautiously, her scanner confirming what she could see with her own eyes. It's badly injured, trapped under debris. There was a moment of stunned silence from the Orion. Then Zrak's voice, sharp with alarm. Leave it, Dr. Collins. Return to the shuttle immediately. Mara knelt beside the trapped creature. Its breathing was labored, its ribs visible beneath matted fur. Despite being a juvenile, it was still the size of a small transport vehicle, and capable of killing her with a single swipe of its claws. I can't leave it, she said, making her decision. It's suffering. That is not a survivor. Vorda's voice crackled through the comm. That is a predator. The very predator we feared. It's a living being, Mara countered, already preparing a sedative. And it's dying. A thunderous crash from the corridor behind her made the decision even more urgent. The adult shadow manes had broken through. She could hear them tearing through the wreckage, following the scent of their injured young. They're coming for it, Mara realized aloud. The life sign we detected, it wasn't a survivor from the Galatea. It was this cub. Its pack has been trying to rescue it. With swift, practiced movements, Mara administered the sedative into the cub's neck, narrowly avoiding its weak attempt to snap at her hand. As the drug took effect, she used her multi-tool to cut away the debris pinning the creature. Its weight was substantial, but adrenaline gave her strength as she fitted a cargo harness around its sedated form. I've sedated it, she reported, securing the last strap. Using the emergency cargo harness to transport it. Dr. Collins. Captain Orland's voice was grave. Consider your actions carefully, bringing that creature aboard. I've made my decision, Captain. Mara activated the harness's anti-gravity function, lifting the Shadowmane cub just enough that she could drag it. It deserves a chance. The howls of the adult Shadowmanes grew louder. They were close now, perhaps only a corridor away. Mara checked her route back to the entry point, then began moving, the sedated cub floating behind her on the harness. She had made it halfway to the hull breach when the first adult Shadowmane burst through a collapsed bulkhead, its 6 eyes locked onto her. Then the cub. A roar that shook the very hull erupted from its throat. Mara raised her rifle and fired. The ion pulse struck the creature's chest, sending it staggering backward, momentarily disoriented, but not seriously harmed. She fired again, creating enough space to maneuver past it with her precious cargo. More Shadowmanes poured into the corridor behind her. Mara abandoned caution and ran, dragging the sedated cub toward the hull breach. The predators followed, their claws tearing gouges in the metal floor. Sable 2, prepare for immediate takeoff, she shouted into her comm. Remote activation, authorization Collins Alpha 3. The shuttle's engines roared to life in the distance, responding to her command. Mara reached the hull breach and squeezed through, using the anti-gravity harness to maneuver the cub's substantial bulk through the opening. Outside, the desert twilight had deepened, casting long shadows across the sand. The shuttle sat 100 meters away, its ramp lowered, engines glowing. Behind her, the Shadowmanes tore through the hull breach, the silver-striped Alpha in the lead. Mara fired her rifle repeatedly, each shot buying her precious seconds as she dragged the cub toward the shuttle. Come on, she urged the unconscious creature. We're almost there. The ground trembled with the impact of massive paws as the Shadowmane pack closed in. Mara could feel their hot breath on her back as she reached the shuttle ramp. With one final surge of strength, she hauled the cub into the cargo bay and slammed her hand on the door control. The ramp began to rise, but not before an adult Shadowmane, the silver-striped Alpha, reached them. Its massive claw swiped at Mara, tearing a chunk from her jacket before the ramp sealed shut. Sable 2 to Orion, Mara gasped, stumbling to the pilot's chair. Package secured. Initiating emergency takeoff. The shuttle's engines flared, and the craft lifted off as shadow manes surrounded it, leaping futilely at the hull. Mara guided the shuttle upward, her hands shaking with residual adrenaline. "Returning to Orion," she reported. "One passenger, sedated but requires immediate medical attention." The silence from the Orion's end spoke volumes. When Sable 2 docked with the Orion, a security team was waiting, weapons drawn. Captain Orlan floated in his gravity harness at the center, his expression unreadable. Zrak stood at his right, tension evident in the raised scales along his neck. Engineer Vorta hovered at the back, her compound eyes reflecting uncertainty. The shuttle ramp lowered to reveal Mara, disheveled but determined, standing beside the anti-gravity harness bearing the sedated Shadowmane cub. "Dr. Collins," Captain Orlan began, his voice carefully measured. "Explain yourself." Mara stepped forward, positioning herself protectively between the security team and the cub. This creature was trapped in the Galatia's wreckage. It would have died without intervention. "It is a Shadowmane," Zrak hissed, his clawed hand resting on his sidearm. "An apex predator. It cannot be trusted." "It's a juvenile," Mara countered. "Severely injured and malnourished. It poses no immediate threat while sedated." Vorta's antennae twitched anxiously. "Our quarantine systems cannot contain it forever. Once it recovers, it will break out and slaughter everyone aboard." Captain Orlan moved closer, studying the sedated creature. Even in its juvenile state, the Shadowmane was imposing, 6 limbs ending in retractable claws, a ridge of crystal spines along its back, and 6 closed eyes that would, when open, reveal keen intelligence. "Why did you bring it aboard, Dr. Collins?" Orlan asked quietly. "You found no crew member as expected. Only this predator." Mara stood her ground. "Because it was dying. Because no creature deserves to suffer." She took a deep breath. "The adult Shadowmanes were trying to rescue it. They recognized one of their own was in danger and responded. Doesn't that suggest intelligence, compassion?" "It suggests pack behavior," Zrak corrected. "Instinct, not compassion." "Perhaps," Mara acknowledged. "But I believe it deserves a chance. I'm requesting permission to treat its injuries and observe its behavior under controlled conditions." Murmurs of dissent rippled through the security team. One officer stepped forward. "Captain, I formally request immediate extermination of the creature. The risk to the crew is unacceptable." More voices joined in agreement. Mara looked from face to face, seeing fear, distrust, and in some cases, disgust. These were her crewmates, beings she had lived alongside for months. Yet in this moment, they seemed alien to her, unable to see beyond their fear to the possibility of understanding. "I need 48 hours, she pleaded. "If the cub shows any sign of unmanageable aggression after that, I'll reconsider." Captain Orlan was silent for a long moment, his ancient eyes moving from the sedated Shadowmane to Mara and back again. Finally, he spoke. "Transport the creature to Quarantine Bay 12. Maximum security protocols. Dr. Collins will oversee its care, but security teams will maintain constant surveillance." His gaze fixed on Mara. 48 hours. Doctor, not a minute more." "Thank you, Captain." As the Shadowmane was carefully moved to the quarantine bay, Mara heard Zrak mutter to another officer. "Humans. They think every life is precious." She didn't bother correcting him. Instead, she followed the anti-gravity harness bearing her unexpected patient, already planning the treatment regimen in her mind. Quarantine Bay 12 was a reinforced chamber designed to contain potentially hazardous biological specimens. One wall was transparent, allowing observation from the adjacent laboratory. The rest of the space was lined with impact-resistant material and equipped with adjustable atmospheric controls. Dr. Aaron Hayes, the Orion's chief medical officer, met Mara at the quarantine bay entrance. His expression was a mixture of professional curiosity and personal skepticism. "I've prepared the scanner as requested," he said, gesturing to a portable medical unit. "Though I must note my reservations about treating a Class Alpha predator." "Noted," Mara replied, checking the sedative levels in the Shadowmane system. "But I need your expertise. Dr. Hayes, its leg is severely damaged." Hayes sighed but moved forward, activating the scanner. "Let's see what we're dealing with." Together, they transferred the Shadowmane from the harness to the quarantine bay's examination platform. Up close, the creature's injuries were even more apparent. Deep lacerations across its hide, a compound fracture in one hind leg, and signs of dehydration. "The leg will require surgery," Hayes concluded after his scan. "And these lacerations need cleaning and closure. But Mara—" He hesitated, using her first name, a rarity that underscored his concern. "Its hormone levels are concerning. Cortisol and adrenaline equivalents are off the chart. This creature is in a perpetual fight-or-flight state." "That's to be expected," Mara said, preparing surgical tools. "It's injured, separated from its pack, surrounded by unfamiliar beings. Of course it's stressed." "This isn't just stress. These readings suggest a predator primed to attack anything that moves." Hayes shook his head. "I'll assist with the surgery, but I want my objection on record." "Duly noted," Mara replied, her focus already on the task ahead. The surgery took 3 hours. Hayes proved his skill regardless of his reservations, setting the shattered bone and using a regeneration unit to accelerate healing. Mara cleaned and sealed the lacerations, noting with interest that the Shadowmane's blood contained unusual coagulants that had likely kept it alive, despite significant injuries. As they worked, Mara couldn't help noticing something curious. Whenever she spoke softly or hummed a low tune, the Shadowmane's vital signs subtly shifted, heart rate decreasing, respiratory rhythm steadying, even sedated. It seemed to be responding to her voice. "Interesting," she murmured, making notes on her tablet. "It's reacting to specific sound frequencies." Hayes glanced at the monitors. Coincidence? Or perhaps simple autonomic response to auditory stimulation? "Perhaps," Mara agreed, but an idea was forming. Or perhaps something more. After the surgery, they moved the Shadowmane to a recovery area within the quarantine bay. A force field separated the creature from the rest of the chamber, an added precaution insisted upon by security. "The sedative will wear off in approximately 4 hours," Hayes informed her, packing up his equipment. "I suggest you're well clear of the bay when it does." Mara nodded, but she had other plans. When Hayes had gone, she settled herself in the observation area, adjacent to the quarantine bay. From her research on Arelon 7's fauna, she recalled that Shadowmane packs communicated through a combination of vocalizations, including a distinctive low-frequency rumble that mothers used to call their cubs. Using the ship's database and her own recordings, she synthesized a close approximation of this sound. As the hours passed and the sedative began to wear off, Mara watched the Shadowmane closely. Its 6 eyes opened one by one, amber irises contracting in the bay's light. It tried to stand, whimpering as weight pressed on its injured leg despite the surgical repair. Fear and confusion radiated from the creature as it took in its strange surroundings. Mara activated the synthesized sound, a gentle, rhythmic rumble that vibrated through the observation window. The effect was immediate. The Shadowmane's ears swiveled toward the sound, and its frantic movement slowed. It didn't calm completely, but the spike in its vital signs leveled off. "That's it," Mara whispered. "I'm not going to hurt you." Over the next several hours, she alternated between the synthesized Shadowmane calls and her own soft voice. The creature remained wary, but showed no signs of the uncontrolled aggression that Hayes and others had predicted. Instead, it seemed cautious, intelligent, assessing its situation with a clarity that belied the mindless predator description. Jrak found her there the next morning, still at her observation post. "You should rest," he said, studying the shadow mane through the window. "Security can monitor the beast." "He's not a beast," Mara corrected, suppressing a yawn. "I'm calling him Echo." "Naming it," Jacques' tone was disapproving. "A human tendency that serves no purpose." "Names have power," Mara countered. "They transform the unknown into the familiar." The Sarian made a dismissive clicking sound, but didn't argue further. Instead, he watched as Mara arranged small portions of synthesized protein near the quarantine bay's feeding port. "It won't eat that," he predicted. "Shadowmanes consume living prey. They hunt." "Echo is adapting," Mara replied simply. She activated the feeding port, allowing the smell of the protein to reach the Shadowmane. Echo approached cautiously, nostrils flaring. He sniffed the offering but made no move to eat until Mara placed her hand on the transparent wall near the port. To Jacques' visible surprise, Echo hesitated, then gently touched his muzzle to the wall opposite Mara's hand before taking the food and eating with delicate precision. "Remarkable," the Sarian admitted grudgingly. "But one feeding does not indicate domestication." "No," Mara agreed, "but it's a start." Over the next week, Mara established a routine. She visited Echo multiple times daily, gradually introducing various stimuli, different sounds, scents, and visual cues. Each visit, she documented his responses, building a comprehensive profile of Shadowmane cognition and behavior. What emerged contradicted everything the Federation thought it knew about these creatures. Far from being mindless killers, Echo displayed problem-solving abilities, emotional responses, and most surprisingly, a capacity for trust. He began to recognize Mara's voice, perking up when she entered the observation area. The low-frequency calls became less necessary as he responded directly to her verbal commands. Dr. Hayes continued to monitor Echo's physical recovery, his initial skepticism gradually giving way to scientific curiosity. "The leg is healing faster than I anticipated," he informed Mara during one examination. "And look at these readings." He indicated a neural scan on his tablet. "Stress hormones have decreased by 70%. And there's something else. A small but significant increase in oxytocin-equivalent compounds when you're present." "Bonding hormones," Mara translated, unable to hide her satisfaction. "Indeed." Hayes looked thoughtful. "I'm beginning to think you might be right about this creature's capacity for socialization." Not everyone was convinced. Lieutenant Vorta continued to express concerns at the daily security briefings, and a significant portion of the crew remained wary. But a subtle shift was occurring. More crew members lingered at the observation window, watching Echo's interactions with Mara. Some even volunteered to assist with his care, albeit under strict supervision. The true test came unexpectedly. 10 days after Echo's arrival, a power surge disrupted systems throughout the ship. In Quarantine Bay 12, the electromagnetic locks disengaged with an audible click. Alarms blared, and security teams converged on the area, weapons drawn. Mara was in her quarters when the alert sounded. She raced to the Quarantine Bay, heart pounding with fear. Not for herself or the crew, but for Echo. If he reacted aggressively to the security teams, all her work would be undone. He would be deemed a threat and eliminated. She arrived to find a tense standoff. The Quarantine Bay door stood open, security officers forming a semicircle, rifles aimed at the entrance. Captain Orlan and Jacques were present, the captain's expression grave, the lieutenant's hand steady on his weapon. "Hold your fire!" Mara shouted, pushing through the line of officers. "Dr. Collins, stay back," Orlan commanded. "The containment has been breached." "Let me handle this," she pleaded. "Please, Captain." After a moment's hesitation, Orlan nodded. "Proceed with caution." Mara stepped forward, stopping at the Quarantine Bay entrance. Inside, Echo stood motionless, his 6 eyes fixed on the armed security team. His posture was tense but not aggressive, his injured leg held slightly above the floor, despite its nearly healed state. "Echo," Mara called softly. "It's all right." The Shadowmane's ears swiveled toward her voice. Slowly, deliberately. He sat down on his haunches and raised a single forepaw, holding it suspended in the air, a gesture she had been teaching him as a greeting. Then, to the astonishment of everyone present, he lowered himself to the floor and rolled onto his side, exposing his vulnerable underbelly. A universal sign of submission. The security officer nearest Mara slowly lowered her rifle, her expression stunned. Jraq's yellow eyes widened in disbelief. Captain Orlan's massive form shifted in his gravity harness, his ancient gaze thoughtful. "Dock a feed from the quarantine camera to every crew monitor," the captain ordered softly. Within minutes, screens throughout the Orion displayed the remarkable scene. At Mara's gentle verbal commands, Echo performed a series of behaviors that demonstrated not just obedience but understanding. Sitting, staying, approaching, even retrieving a small medical scanner she had accidentally dropped. Murmurs spread through the watching crew. "Is it domesticated? Has this human done the impossible? I've never seen anything like it." The quarantine breach became a turning point. Captain Orlan called a ship-wide assembly, where opinions on Echo's status were openly debated. A faction led by several junior officers argued that he remained a potential threat and should be returned to Arelon 7. Another group, growing in number daily, advocated for his continued presence aboard the Orion as a research subject and potential aid. Mara addressed the assembled crew, her voice steady despite the stakes. "I did not bring a weapon aboard this ship," she said. "I brought hope. In Terran history, every predator we ever thought irredeemable, wolves, big cats, even great white sharks, became our companions when we approached them with respect. Echo deserves the same chance." Captain Orlan's decision came after hours of deliberation. Echo would remain aboard the Orion under Mara's supervision. If any threat emerged, he would be sedated and contained. But until then, he would be granted limited access to designated areas of the ship, always under guard. It was a compromise, but one Mara could live with. More importantly, it gave Echo a chance to prove himself to the crew. That chance came sooner than anyone expected. 2 weeks later, during a routine engine test, Echo became agitated in his newly assigned quarters adjacent to Mara's. He paced, whined, and scratched at the door until Mara investigated. "What is it, Echo?" she asked, concerned by his unusual behavior. The Shadowmane led her to a ventilation grate, pawing at it insistently. Mara detected nothing unusual, but Echo's distress was clear. Trusting his heightened senses, she contacted engineering. "This is Dr. Collins to engineering. Echo is detecting something unusual in the ventilation system near Section 23. "We're reading normal parameters," came the reply from Vorta's assistant. "All systems nominal." "Please check again," Mara insisted. "He's never reacted this way before." Reluctantly, Engineer Vorta dispatched a maintenance drone to inspect the area. Minutes later, alarms blared. "Coolant leak detected in Auxiliary System 3. Vorta's voice came over the comm. Urgent now. "Evacuate all personnel from Deck 5. The situation was critical. A toxic coolant was seeping into the ventilation system, undetected by sensors calibrated for more substantial leaks. Echo had sensed it minutes before the ship's systems could measure the accumulation. Vorta herself arrived at Mara's location, her chitinous exoskeleton clicking as she moved rapidly through the corridor. Where exactly was the Shadowma? Was Echo indicating a problem? Mara showed her the ventilation grate. Vorta scanned it with a specialized device, then called for an emergency repair team. "The breach is in the adjacent junction. If we don't seal it within 15 minutes, the entire deck will be contaminated." "Can Echo help?" Mara suggested. "His sense of smell could pinpoint the exact location." Vorda hesitated, her compound eyes reflecting uncertainty. Then she nodded. "Bring him, quickly." Echo led them unerringly to a maintenance shaft where coolant was leaking from a hairline fracture in a transfer valve. The repair team sealed it with moments to spare. When the crisis had passed, Vorda approached Mara in the corridor outside engineering. The Kirasian engineer's antennae were still, a sign of serious contemplation. "I owe you an acknowledgement," Vorda said formally. "The Shadowma, Echo saved this ship today. His sensory abilities exceeded our best detection systems. He's part of this crew now," Mara replied simply. "Yes," Vorda agreed, surprising Mara. "I believe he is." Word of Echo's contribution spread quickly through the Orion. Crew members who had avoided him now sought opportunities to observe or even interact with him. Under Mara's supervision, junior xenobiology officers and engineering interns began taking shifts working with Echo, teaching him to recognize different ship components and potential hazards. Even Lieutenant Jrak's attitude shifted. The Sarian officer requested access to the Federation's historical archives on Terran domestication of predator species. After several days of study, he approached Mara as she exercised Echo in a converted cargo bay. "I have reviewed the data," Jrak announced without preamble. "Wolves to canines, big cats to companions, marine predators to aids in ocean navigation." He watched as Echo retrieved a sensory scanner, delivering it gently to Mara's hand. "I see now your Terran methods are not foolish. Perhaps we have underestimated the power of empathy." Coming from a Sarian, this was high praise indeed, Mara smiled. "Would you like to try giving him a command?" Jrak hesitated, then nodded. Following Mara's instructions, he issued a simple sit command, accompanied by the hand gesture she had established. Echo complied immediately, his 6 eyes regarding the Sarian with intelligent interest. "Remarkable," Jrak murmured, extending a scaled hand cautiously toward Echo. The Shadowmane sniffed his fingers, then gently bumped his head against Jrak's palm, a gesture of acceptance that left the stoic lieutenant momentarily speechless. 3 months after his rescue, Echo had become an integral part of the Orion's operations. His enhanced senses supplemented the ship's detection systems, particularly in identifying subtle environmental changes that sensors might miss. Captain Orlan officially designated him a crew member with the title Xenofauna Relations Specialist, a designation that recognized both his unique status and his contribution to the ship's mission. Mara received a promotion to Chief of Xeno Relations, her successful rehabilitation of Echo having demonstrated the potential for interspecies cooperation beyond anything previously achieved in the Federation. It was during this period of integration and success that the Orion received a troubling transmission. A mining station on Zarian Prime, an outpost at the edge of Federation space, reported they were under siege by a pack of Shadowmanes. The creatures had breached perimeter defenses and were attacking with unprecedented coordination. Captain Orlan called an emergency strategy session. The bridge crew gathered around the holographic display, which showed thermal images of massive Shadowmanes surrounding the mining station's main compound. "The situation is dire," Orlan explained. "The miners report at least 30 Shadowmanes attacking in waves. Their defensive measures are failing." "How did Shadowmanes reach Zarian Prime?" Jrak questioned. "Their native range is limited to Arelon 7. Vorda manipulated the display, bringing up a data feed from the mining station's archives. According to their records, they've been capturing Shadowmane cubs for the exotic pet trade. Price, 20,000 credits each. Mara felt a chill. "They're stealing cubs from their packs." "And the adults have followed," Jrak concluded. "Remarkable tracking ability across interstellar distances." "The miners request immediate military intervention," Captain Orlan continued. "But the nearest Federation battlecruiser is 3 days away at maximum speed. By then, the station will have fallen," Vorda noted grimly. "And the human miners likely slaughtered." Mara studied the holographic display, an idea forming. Echo can help, she said suddenly. If we return the cubs, we might avert a massacre. Shadowmanes fight for their young. They won't stop until they recover them. You suggest using Echo as… what? A translator. Zrak's tone was skeptical but not dismissive. Exactly. Mara turned to Captain Orlan. Echo understands both our commands and Shadowmane vocalizations. He could communicate our intentions to the pack. The risk is considerable, Orlan observed. We would be placing Echo, and you, in extreme danger. We have no alternatives, Mara argued. And every minute we delay, more lives are at risk, both human and Shadowmane. After a tense discussion, Captain Orlan made his decision. Prepare Shuttle Sable 2 for immediate departure. Dr. Collins and Echo will lead a small peacekeeping contingent to Zarian Prime. Lieutenant Zrak will command the security detail. As they prepared for the mission, Mara worked with Echo, reinforcing the vocal commands they had developed and introducing new ones specific to the task ahead. Echo seemed to sense the gravity of the situation. His attention was unwavering, his responses precise. You understand what we're asking, don't you? Mara said softly, stroking the ridge of crystal spines along his back. We need your help to prevent bloodshed. Echo pressed his muzzle against her hand, a gesture that had become his way of expressing agreement or affection. Shuttle Sable 2 departed the Orion with its unusual diplomatic team. Mara, Echo, Lieutenant Zrak, and 4 security officers equipped with non-lethal weaponry. As they approached Zarian Prime, Mara briefed the team on her strategy. Echo will initiate contact with the Shadowmane pack. I'll interpret his vocalizations as best I can, but much of this will rely on his ability to convey our peaceful intentions. Our goal is to negotiate the return of the cubs in exchange for the miners' safety. And if the Shadowmanes refuse? One of the security officers asked. Mara glanced at Echo, who sat calmly beside her seat in the shuttle. Then we'll need to improvise. Zarian Prime's surface came into view, a rugged landscape of red rock and sparse vegetation. The mining station was visible as a collection of prefabricated structures surrounded by a perimeter fence. Beyond that fence, thermal imaging revealed dozens of Shadowmanes, their massive forms circling the compound like predatory sharks. We'll land half a kilometer from the perimeter, Zrak decided. Approach on foot to minimize aggression triggers. As Sable 2 touched down, Mara felt a mixture of fear and determination. This mission would either validate everything she believed about interspecies cooperation or end in disaster. Either way, there was no turning back now. The team disembarked, forming a tight formation with Echo and Mara at the center. They moved cautiously toward the mining station, weapons ready, but pointed downward in a non-threatening posture. As they crested a ridge, the full scale of the situation became apparent. At least 40 Shadowmanes surrounded the mining station. Many bore the scars of energy weapon impacts where the miners had tried to drive them off. The massive predators moved with purpose, testing different sections of the perimeter fence, clearly searching for weaknesses. They're coordinating, Zrak observed, impressed despite himself. Look, they retreat when the defense turrets target them. Then another group probes a different section. Intelligence, not just instinct, Mara agreed. Echo, are you ready? The Shadowmane at her side straightened to his full height, his 6 eyes scanning the pack. He made a soft rumbling sound in his throat. Acknowledgement. Let's proceed, Mara said, slowly. They descended the ridge, making no attempt to conceal their approach. Almost immediately, several Shadowmanes broke from the main pack and turned toward them, crystalline spines bristling. Echo stepped forward without prompting, placing himself between the approaching predators and Mara's team. He emitted a series of low growls and whistles, vocalizations Mara had taught him to use when communicating with his own kind. The effect was immediate. The approaching Shadowmanes halted, heads tilting in what appeared to be confusion or curiosity. One of them, a titan with 6 glowing eyes and a mantle of crystal spines larger than any Mara had seen, stepped forward. This was clearly the pack's alpha. Echo dropped to a submissive posture, his belly low to the ground, eyes downcast. The gesture was one Mara recognized from her research, a show of respect to a dominant pack member. But Echo added something unexpected. He nudged Mara forward with his muzzle, indicating she should step up beside him. Heart pounding, Mara moved forward. The alpha Shadowmane regarded her with ancient, intelligent eyes. Behind her, she heard the security team shifting nervously, but Drak's quiet command kept them from raising their weapons. "We know you're here for your cubs," Mara said clearly, trusting Echo to somehow convey her meaning. "The miners took them. They were wrong to do so. We want to help you get your children back and prevent more bloodshed." Echo translated. Or at least, that's what Mara believed he was doing. His vocalizations were complex, a torrent of growls, clicks, and rumbles that no human throat could replicate. The alpha listened, massive head tilted slightly. Then, to Mara's astonishment, it responded. A series of low-frequency calls vibrated through the air, sounds that made her bones resonate with their power. Echo listened intently, then turned to Mara and made a gesture they had developed during training, a paw drawn across the ground, indicating agreement. I think it's willing to negotiate," Mara said, hardly daring to believe it. "Remarkable," Drak murmured. "Ask about the cub's location." Through Echo, Mara established a rudimentary communication. The Shadowmane pack had tracked their stolen cubs across interstellar space, following the miners' transport ship to Zarian Prime. The cubs were being held in containment pens within the central mining facility. "We need to contact the mining station," Mara decided. "Let them know we're negotiating a peaceful resolution." Drak activated his comm unit, establishing a connection with the station's command center. After explaining the situation, he received a reluctant agreement from the station manager to allow their team entry. Though the manager made it clear he considered the entire negotiation lunacy. "The Shadowmanes will wait for 1 hour," Mara translated from Echo's vocalizations. "After that, they will resume their attacks." The team approached the perimeter fence, which powered down briefly to allow them entry. Inside, they were met by armed mining personnel, their expressions a mixture of fear, exhaustion, and skepticism. "This is insane," the station manager, a heavy-set man named Gorin, declared. "You can't negotiate with predators." "We just did," Mara replied calmly. "Now show us the cubs." Reluctantly, Gorin led them to a sealed section of the facility. Inside, transparent steel cages contained 7 Shadowmane cubs of varying ages. The young creatures paced anxiously, some bearing sedative dart wounds, others showing signs of malnutrition. "This is illegal trafficking of protected species," Drak stated, his voice cold with disapproval. "The Federation will prosecute." "There's a market," Gorin shrugged, though he had the grace to look uncomfortable. "Rich collectors pay top credit for exotic pets." "They're not pets," Mara corrected sharply. "They're intelligent beings with family bonds stronger than you can imagine." She turned to the security team. "Prepare the cubs for transport. We're returning them to their pack." "You can't," Gorin protested. "Do you know how much they're worth?" "More than your life," Drak inquired pointedly. "Because that is the alternative." Under the lieutenant's stern supervision, the mining staff assisted in preparing the cubs for transport. Mara and Echo checked each one, the adult Shadowmane displaying remarkable gentleness as he sniffed and nuzzled the frightened cubs, offering reassurance through soft vocalizations. When they were ready, Mara addressed the station manager one final time. "The Federation will be sending investigators to review your operation. I suggest you use the time until their arrival to bring your practices into compliance with interstellar law." Outside the perimeter fence, the Shadowmane pack waited with uncanny patience. Mara, Echo, and the security team approached slowly, guiding the 7 cubs, who trotted nervously alongside them. At the sight of their young, a ripple of movement passed through the pack. The Alpha stepped forward, its massive form towering over Mara and even Echo. For a tense moment, Mara feared it might attack despite their peaceful delivery. But then, the cubs rushed forward, and the adult Shadowmanes enfolded them into their midst with gentle nuzzles and rumbling vocalizations that could only be described as joyful. Echo remained at Mara's side, his posture alert but calm. He exchanged a series of calls with the Alpha, which Mara interpreted as best she could. "They will leave the mining station in peace," she translated for Drak and the security team. "But they want assurances that no more cubs will be taken. The Federation will establish a protection zone around Arelon 7, Drak promised. "I will personally see to it." The Alpha Shadowmane regarded them for a long moment, its ancient eyes seeming to evaluate their sincerity. Then it made a sound unlike any Mara had heard before, a resonant, almost musical call that echoed across the rocky terrain. One by one, the pack turned and began moving away from the mining station, cubs safely in their midst. Echo watched them go, his 6 eyes reflecting what Mara could only interpret as a complex emotion, perhaps a mixture of satisfaction and wistfulness. "You could go with them," she said softly, resting her hand on his crystal-tipped spine. "Return to your kind." Echo turned to her, his massive head tilting in what had become a familiar gesture of consideration. Then he gently bumped his muzzle against her side and stood firmly beside her. His choice was clear. When Sable II returned to the Orion, the news of their successful diplomatic mission had preceded them. The shuttle bay was filled with crew members, all eager to witness the return of the ship's most unusual diplomat. Captain Orlan waited at the center, his gravity harness adjusted to bring him to eye level with Mara as she disembarked. "Dr. Collins," he greeted her formally. "Lieutenant Drak has submitted his preliminary report. It seems you and Echo have achieved the impossible." "Not impossible, Captain," Mara corrected with a smile. "Just unprecedented." Echo patted down the shuttle ramp behind her, his posture proud but composed. The crew parted to create a path for him, their expressions now respectful rather than fearful. "I have received a communication from Federation Command," Orlan continued. "They wish to study your methods with a view to establishing a new diplomatic protocol for interactions with so-called predator species. They are calling it the Collins Protocol." Mara felt a rush of validation, but her focus remained on Echo, who had become so much more than a research subject or even a pet. He was her partner, a bridge between worlds. In the days that followed, Captain Orlan addressed the entire crew in a formal ceremony. Echo stood beside Mara on the podium, his crystal spines polished to a gleam for the occasion. "Today, we witnessed a miracle," Orlan declared, his deep voice resonating through the assembly hall. "Adversaries becoming allies, hate turning into hope. What Dr. Collins and Echo accomplished proves that our greatest weapon is compassion. In recognition of their service, I am pleased to announce that Dr. Mara Collins is promoted to Chief of Xeno-Relations, and Echo is officially designated as the Orion's Xenofauna Relations Specialist, the first of his kind in the Federation fleet." That evening, Mara recorded an entry in her personal log as Echo lounged nearby in her quarters, which had been modified to accommodate his substantial size. "They thought I was saving a killer," she wrote, "but he became our ward, our sentinel, our friend. In him, we see ourselves, and the truth that every species can be more than its worst instinct. Today marks not just a personal victory, but a new chapter in Federation history, one where we recognize that intelligence and compassion exist in forms we never imagined, and that the universe's greatest miracles often come with teeth and claws." Later, they stood together in the Orion's observation deck, watching as a vibrant nebula bloomed beyond the viewport. Stars scattered like diamonds across the velvet blackness, each one potentially circled by worlds with their own unique forms of life, waiting to be understood. Echo nudged Mara's hand gently, accepting a simple Terran biscuit from her fingers with careful precision. His 6 amber eyes tracked the stars, reflecting their light. He emitted a soft rumble, a sound that Mara had come to recognize as contentment, trust, gratitude. Whatever worlds the Orion might visit next, whatever strange new life they might encounter, humans and predators would stand side by side, a living testament to the power of reaching across the divide between species, between fear and understanding, between the expected and the possible. In that moment, watching the universe unfold before them, Mara knew that their journey together was just beginning.